Okay, so let's kick this bad boy off. So first of all, I just want to welcome everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. And welcome to our webinar, The Ugly Truth About Upgrading to BAW, brought to you by Pyramid Solutions. My name is Dana Carlin, your host for today and the marketing executive here, and I'm excited to share with you some of our upgrading knowledge with our jam-packed session today, in which we'll unveil the 3 ugly truths that every organization, including yourselves, must face when performing an upgrade to BAW. Let's see if we can get this slide changed.
Yep, we'll be all right.
Okay, so the good old-fashioned housekeeping stuff. So getting back on track, just let you guys know, because our lawyers do make us say this, the webinar is being recorded, and I will share it with everybody as soon as we conclude. If at any time you guys do have questions during the presentation, no worries. You can just type it into the chat box. It should be located on the right side of your screen. If we get to the end of the webinar and we're not able to get to your question, I'll make sure that we get it answered. Either Mike or I will reach out directly. Okay, so a lot of you that are already on the call, I see a lot of familiar names on there, so hi everybody. You know who Pyramid is, but for those who are new, we want to make sure you guys understand what we're about. So here at Pyramid, we pride ourselves on being more than just a technology company. We really strive to become our clients' trusted advisors and partners. We have a saying here that, if our clients are not successful, then we're not successful, and we live by that every single day. Many organizations know Pyramid as a case guys. We've been known for case management for a very long time, but over the years, we've made major investments and are very, very proud to say that we have truly transformed ourselves into a digital transformation company that is really helping organizations like you guys on your path to hyper automation. Pardon me. My team, who I know are a lot smarter than I, they're very adverse in the entire IBM DBA platform and Cloud Pak for automation offerings, from workflow to RPA to capture to even cloud now. So if you guys are interested in anything other than BAW, like we are focusing on today, feel free to send me a chat message or reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to have a conversation. So now into the good stuff. So some of you already know our presenter, Mike, aka our invincible workflow warrior, and trust me, you do not want to know how he got that name. It's a funny story. Ask him yourselves, though. He might tell it to you. Just a little background on Mike. He's been working with business automation and content management technologies for longer than he would like to actually admit. He might admit it to you, though, if you do ask. He does hold 5 automation software patents, and if he's not at his computer working away, he's actually at the gym doing deadlifts. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, the last time I heard you were able to do 250 pounds?
No, you're confusing yourself and myself. That's
No.
yeah, you're a little confused this afternoon. So.
But with that, we can jump right into it. And Mike, it's over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking time to be with us today. And since we are kind of pressed for time, we're going to jump right into the topics at hand. Okay. Our experience tells us there are several considerations as you journey from BPM to BAW. And first among these is the notion of business-centric processing and business-centric thinking, identifying and modeling the primary business objects in your company. And in every business, you will have customers, accounts, and employees and things like that. But for example, in property and casualty insurance, okay, your business objects are typically things like policies, insureds, claims, agencies, and so forth. And in banking and financial services, you might be talking about financial accounts, business entities that you're doing business with, mortgages, branch offices, and so on. So each one of these becomes a business object, okay? And that's what you have to start thinking about. And I'll get some more. I'll give you some more examples as we progress through the rest of this presentation. But the second consideration is the available licensing options that you might have, and arriving at what is the right thing for you. So I'll spend some time this afternoon just talking a little bit about some of the options that are, that IBM is making available, and we'll, clearly we can't hit on all of them, but we'll hit on the ones that the primary motivators are to save you money and to make the most sense for where you are and where you would like to go. And then we'll round up the conversation by talking about some of the upgrade paths that are available to you. It's generally a maze of options here, just because everybody starts from a different place and everybody has a different place that they'd like to get to. So what I have chosen to do this afternoon is to talk about 3 possible scenarios that we can just kind of walk through, and you can see how well your situation matches up to that. On to the next one, Dana. Thank you. So just so that we baseline and everybody's on the same page, just we're going to talk to, BAW, Business Automation Workflow, and what is that? And the purpose of this seminar here is to just talk about, okay, given that you're in a BPM space today and you want to evolve to BAW, what does it take to get there, right? And so that's where we'll start our conversation, or we'll carry on the conversation. To begin with, about 18 to 24 months ago, IBM announced that they were going to take their Process Manager and Case Manager products, okay, and combine them into a new product called Business Automation Workflow, or BAW for short. And this new product, of course, is the combination of 2, heavily used and very mature products. They're out there in the industry. And so IBM knows that they have to kind of be careful in terms of how they bring these products together. And, we all recognize that folks like yourselves have made significant investment over the years. And I think IBM, that fact is not lost on IBM. Now, having said all that, it's also, to the rest of us, in the real world, we understand that you just can't take 2 products and slam them together and say, yep, here's your new product, and we're going to call it a new name. It takes some time to knit these 2 products together, and that's what IBM is doing. And in a series of releases since their announcement, they are slowly integrating these products together. They've come quite far, and that's what we're talking to today. Is some of the things that we've seen that really start to give you the best of both worlds. Is probably the best way to say it. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the final thing we have to recognize before we leave this slide is the fact that there's a lot of details here. BAW itself, the combination of the 2 other products, there are a lot of details in terms of implementation, features, and functions, which we won't have time to get into today. So I'm just going to be hitting the highlights as we go. So what we need to do next is take a quick look at the actual structure of these different products. On the left-hand side, in the green rectangle, there are the 2 BPM, let's just call them building blocks, and the ICM means the IBM Case Manager building blocks. On the left, of course, you've got the application, the actual process portal, and that's what users use in the BPM world to access their workflows and to make decisions and so forth. All right, and in the middle here, below that, also on the BPM stack, is the process engine itself, the thing that actually executes these workflows. And then you've got a design tool that goes with that stack. In the case manager space, again, the application layer, that's what we have come to know as Content Navigator. And that thing continues to live on, Content Navigator, as a user interface and a front end to the rest of the stack. That concept lives on in BAW. Now, there's also the process layer, which is in purple over here in the case manager space. And that continues to live on too, but that's less important for this conversation, but it's the traditional FileNet process engine. And at the bottom of the stack, you've also got your case design, your design tools as you lay those out. We'll come back and talk about the actual content block here in a minute. So from a BPM perspective, when you transition to BAW, there are some things that'll change and some things that don't. What does not change is your process designer. That continues to be as capable as it was, and you'll continue to use that user experience, that user interface for designing and building your workflows and your processes are still being maintained. And then they've added capability to that. Your existing workflows are fully supported. There's no changes required, okay? And your existing user interfaces and whatever integrations you might have with other systems within your technology environment, those are all still fully supported and available. Now, what does change, and this is where I would argue for the better, is that you now get access to case and content, and that's the lime green and the light blue boxes on these drawings here. Now, what does that get you? So now they give you a whole lot of capability which you didn't have before in the BPM world. And let's start with the lime green, the case block. Okay, that actually implies two different things. First of all, that lime green spot placed on the drawing brings two things. One is the actual case concept and constructs. Okay, and we'll talk some more about what that might be, as well as you also get another tool called Case Builder, which allows you to build out your solution in one place. And that Case Builder concept is also evolving into the future with BAW and beyond as IBM continues to add more into this particular stack. Now, the content block, which is in light blue here, is something new, may not be totally new, but what it provides is it represents the traditional FileNet P8 repository, also known as an object store. And what the benefit you get here is it's fully integrated, which means that from a BPM perspective, you have a lot of capability that you didn't used to have before in terms of being able to persist your data. And all of these case objects are automatically persisted into the object store. And that's a huge win in terms of being able to retain your data for future analytics and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. Let's move on to the next one. So now let's jump into the first challenge that you're going to face, or what we're calling an ugly truth this afternoon, is that you can't avoid this as you transition out of BPM and move on to the next generation. You have to start thinking about the case paradigm and what does that actually mean. And there are several things that come with this, but this afternoon I'm just going to highlight 4 of them, and certainly we can have future conversations if you want to get into some more of these details. So case-centric thinking, okay, goes back to my initial introduction slide where we were talking about identifying the business objects that constitute your business domain, okay? And it literally applies to every industry and any industry that you might be in, okay? These business objects become your case types in Case Manager. So you have claims, loans, customer business objects, okay? And these business objects or cases become the focus of your application. It's no longer all about the process, okay? Historically, BPM forced you to think and made you think about the process and what happens and where does my process go and how do I optimize my process. Now you start thinking about what is my business object? Let's just say we got a customer. Okay, that's my business object. And so your processes related to that customer, let's say the customer calls in and you have a customer service interaction, okay? That interaction is really an activity. It's something that has a start, it's something that ends, and there may or may not be some follow-up activities from that, okay? But all of that is happening within the context of your customer, and therefore that customer represents the case or the business object. Now, the question will soon become, okay, if I've got these activities running, there's an interaction with my customer. When that interaction ends, what happens to the data? Where does it go? And that question is answered by the next point on this slide, and that's the persistence and the data model. So what I mean by persistence is the ability, the data layer. Where does the data go? Where does it live forevermore, right? And where does it get managed? So at some point, if things need to be managed out of your system, they can be. But with Case, you have the tight integration of that content repository available for your use. And that's where your data model is persisted. And this opens up all sorts of opportunities, okay? And what I like to describe as the data model becomes more important. So from a data perspective, you now have the option of storing your data in 3 different places. You can store your data in the case, and I actually have a couple of visual aids to talk to this, but we'll just cover them here at a high level. You have a case, you have the activity where you can store some of your data, and you also have the option to store it in process variables in BPM. So when the process is active and going on, you have data in the process that you can preserve. Let's say the status of the process, the time it started, the time it ended, who touched it, all that good stuff, right? But you may want to retain the customer name and the customer contact information and all of that at a different place in your data model so that it persists and is not subject to an activity ending. So if you have designed your data model carefully, and this is what the case paradigm gives you, is that option to refactor your data model so that you can it works better for you and more efficiently and effectively. And what you really end up doing is translating that effectiveness, that new data model, making it more useful for your business users. So finally, one more bullet to talk to on this particular slide is the user interface. And this is Case Manager's long-lived, widget-based user experience, and it now becomes a step closer. It's a little more accessible to your BPM application. The existing process center views will render and will work just fine, but now you have the option to start leveraging the IBM Case Manager user interface. Now, just a word of caution, that UI is also changing, that user experience is changing from a technology implementation perspective, and that's going to be coming in 2021 from IBM. Stay tuned for that because we probably will end up doing a webinar on that too. And finally, we'll move on to the next slide and start talking about one last aspect of Case Manager, and this has to do with activities. Thank you, Dana. I'll make it short on this one. I like this picture because what it does is shows us a couple of things. In particular, it shows us how all of the different case objects relate to each other and how activities also and your existing process instances and process workflows are actually positioned in the big scheme of things. The blue rectangle on top describes represents the persistence layer, and that's the information and those are the objects that are stored in the content engine, and they are persisted. That's the way it works today. Of course, the rectangle on the bottom represents your process instances and what happens when actual BPM processes work and when they start and when they end. The key message on this slide is that I'd like you to recognize that in the case block on top, there's something called case properties, okay, and that represents one aspect of your data model. There are also documents there. Documents are also part of your data model. There are activity properties, again. So these first 3, case properties, activity properties, and documents, are stored in the content engine and they are persisted. The process variables, okay, which happen down on the bottom layer, are also there, but they tend to be more transient. And here's the important thing. At a given step in the user interface, all of these data elements are available. So a user is able to interact both with transient data as well as persisted data. And I think that's all I want to talk to on this particular slide. Dana, can we move on? Thank you. So at this point, I'm not spend a lot of time on these, but I just wanted to kind of give you a couple of graphical or visual aids in terms of how these things come together. Activities essentially wrap the existing processes or new processes that you might define. And this screen right here shows you the case builder screen where you can say, yep, I want to define a new process, the process being as defined in BPM, or I want to use an existing BPM process. So these processes are now treated as first-class objects in the object store and are stored that way. So this is the case manager perspective. Can we go on to the next slide here, Dana, please? On the flip side, when you're in your BPM environment and building out a workflow, okay, you can use the tools now to actually interact with case constructs. You can add comments, you can create cases, you have access to all the case data, again, as first-class data elements inside of the BPM workflows. So this coupling between being able to, from the case environment, access BPM constructs, and from the BPM constructs to access case constructs, allows you gives you a lot of capability that you didn't have before. Some of this makes it challenging. Some of this is where you have to start converting and changing the way you think. But these are the challenges that present themselves. But if you come at it with the right guidance, these are the things that can make a difference and improve your overall solution, overall product that you deliver to your business, and eventually will turn up as better business outcomes. I'll stop for a second and get something to drink. Hold on. Okay, so now we move on to the second part, the next challenge that we'll be facing. This has to do with licensing. Yeah, there's different ways to license things, but clearly the one of interest here is to recognize, or it's probably best to recognize, that you could do your traditional software and services like you do today, maintain your licensing model with IBM. The other approach is to decide, and if you do have a cloud strategy or thinking about cloud, you have to understand where your cloud, or what your cloud strategy is in terms of where you'd like to go. And to that end, IBM presents options, and they've offered these products, including BPM or BAW now on the cloud, and you can do it in an individual, product by product basis. And so you get to pick your cloud environment, or if you want to upgrade to the Cloud Pak for Automation, which we short form to CP4A, okay, you now start considering all the different possibilities on the DBA platform. If we can move on to the next slide, I'll talk some more about these things. So the Cloud Pak for Automation licensing options really come in three flavors. There's the buy, which is at the bottom, the rent, or the lease. The buy model says that you will basically continue buying, pay for the current licensing that you have and continue to do that. There's nothing different about that. The second option is to rent, and when they consider renting, to IBM that means you're basically paying for it on a month-by-month basis. The advantage of doing this is that it allows you to spike up when your volume increases. And so that typically is a good thing when you get into, if you have a seasonal aspect to your business. And then the last thing is called subscription-based licensing, which is, they are now terming it committed term licenses, CTL. And these can be 12, 24, 36-month licenses. And this represents a longer commitment on your part. But what they do, of course, is give you a heavier discount. And I will summarize all of this licensing conversation by saying this. The licensing options are being promoted by IBM, okay? The one that they are really giving you the best discounts for and really want to see you, they're giving you they're basically incentivizing you to go to the CTL subscription licensing for either 12, 24, or 36 months. That's where they would like to see you go. That's where they give you your best discount. But that's something you're going to have to kind of take a look and see what you're paying today and what really makes sense for you long term. I think that's all I want to say on the licensing. Let's move on to the upgrade options. So there are, like I said earlier, there's numerous ways to get there from here. What path do you take from, if you're in the BPM space today and whatever versions of BPM you are on, and you'd like to move to BAW? Working with our clients, we see three primary motivations, okay, and I'm calling them the minimal approach, which is the quickest to market, lower risk. What I call the strategic approach, and maybe I should back up the minimal approach, I call it the lift and shift, where you basically shorten the time to get this thing moved to the new platform. The strategic approach is what I call the uplift and shift. So you improve as you go, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these things. And then the last one is what I call the visionary approach, where you're being a little bit more open to the new technology and technology driven. Can we move on to the next one, Dana? So the lift and shift environment, which is what I consider the minimal investment approach, okay? You're basically delivering functional parity between your existing and your new environment. So from a business perspective, everything is pretty much the same as much as you can make it. Your challenges here are just going to be converting from process-centric to case-centric thinking, like we spoke about earlier. And the other thing that you do have to consider is the case manager user experience. When you go from process portal to case manager and getting into the BAW space, this is where you might want to spend at least a minimal amount of time understanding what's available to you. You can do this with minimal, even less, without getting into the case manager space, but I think it is necessary for you to understand just a little bit so you know how to deploy solutions and so forth. There's other words on the slide, but we don't think we need to get into all of those details right now. The strategic investment, this is what I call the uplift and shift approach. And in this case, what we're doing is focusing on taking the existing app, but we're going to address issues with it, fix things if we need to improve on what the business sees. If they've got issues with it, then we kind of fix the problems and move it forward. And the other thing this allows us to do to some extent is to future-proof your application, meaning you go ahead and pick up, if you've got some old outdated technology pieces that you need to get rid of, then you focus on just getting those out of your environments and look to implement stuff on the newer platform so that you're more in line with where the technology is going in the future. Let me go on to the next one. And this is the final, the third scenario for upgrading. And this is where you might want to be a little bit more visionary and look ahead, let's say the 3 to 4 to 5 year outlook into the future. What can you do with the technology? Where can it take you? Okay. And here, in this situation, you're considering the DBA platform in all of its different variations. It's got 5 different pillars, including the decisions, which is the business rules. The content, of course, is part of BAW, or comes along with the BAW. Workflow piece, of course, that's something we're talking about, and capture, depending on where you are on your capture journey. RPA is something that's a separate licensed, but again, it is something that a lot of our clients are looking at because it helps them automate and helps them get a better definition and better control over their business processes. So the motivation here is, okay, what risk are you willing to take? And how far out and down the road do you want to look? So this last one is more for the visionaries on the call here. If you're looking to maximize the impact of the technology available to you, this is the option. This is the right way to go. And we have found that most of our clients have invested heavily in 1 or 2 of these different pillars of the DBA platform. But my message to you is, when upgrading to BAW, recognize that you can also easily include the capabilities of other pillars of the platform as needed. Now, I work with our clients to help them develop these long-term technology roadmaps. So contact me and us if you would like to explore this option further. And with that said, I'm going to wrap up my remarks on these 3 topics: understanding BAW, licensing, and your upgrade options as you consider and/or implement BAW into your organization. So once again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And Dana, over to you.
Great, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I know we're running a couple minutes over, but I did want to give you guys, we do have a special offer for just today. For the attendees that are on the line, we do have a free upgrade assessment workshop if you contact us today. So traditionally we do charge for this, but like I said, if you contact us today and would like to know a little bit more about it, it is a free assessment for you guys. During the assessment, we'll work directly with your teams and we'll help you tackle these 3 ugly truths that Mike went through. So at the end of the assessment, you have a complete understanding of your business-centric processing and how it works. Understand which licensing options is best for you, and then of course, what is the best path to upgrade. So with that, you can either contact Mike directly or you can contact me. You can see my email here. It's dcarlin@pyramidsolutions.com. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and we do have a couple that came in via chat, Mike. So let me pull them up. It looks like you got Hershow's already. Awesome. Another one that came to me private, Mike, was, do you have to be on BPM 8.6 to move over to BAW?
Ooh, that's a good question. The answer is no. I think that I'm kind of going from memory on this, but my understanding is this, that you can be as far back as BPM 8.5 or 8.5.6. And if you're there or any of the other upgrades between 8.5.6 and 8.6, if you're anywhere on that spectrum, you should be able to upgrade to Case Manager, or to BAW, I should say. Now, clearly there are some caveats and there's a lot of installation directions and things like that. But yeah, in general, if you're on BPM 8.5.6 or later, then you should be able to upgrade.
Okay, great. Another one that came directly to me was, will administrators, developers require training after an upgrade?
Oh, I hate to give these kinds of answers, but yes, that's a good question. The answer is it depends, right? If you are looking to change up your user experience, if you're sticking with traditional BPM UI and Process Center and all that, you will, there would be minimal training for the line of business users, the end users. However, I think that your actual application development staff and possibly your server admins and people that monitor the system, they might have to learn new tools and technologies there, just because behind the scenes there's some new things coming into play on BAW.
Okay. And the last one that I have is, let's see, what should I do if I want to upgrade to combine a BPM and Case system at once?
Okay, that again, it kind of depends on versions, where you are, what you're trying to get to, but almost always it's a 2-step process. First, you have to do your BPM upgrade, and there are some specific directions from IBM on how to do that. And then after you do your BPM upgrade, then you would follow the upgrades for a Case Manager to get it to the same BAW version. So I think if you step through the minefield a little carefully, it is possible, and you will end up in the same BAW instance, okay, with all of your assets and applications and workflows intact.
Okay, and that was the last one I have, unless we want to give it a couple more seconds. I don't see anybody typing. So with that, I apologize, we ran a little bit over, but thank you for staying with us, guys. We truly do appreciate it. And if you guys do have any questions or are interested in the free assessment today, please reach out to us. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.